Hello, everyone.
I needed to get a notification that Avenues is live.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. We'll be back. Devin, we had to go up early just to fix that problem. I'm going to put a background up, and I'll come back at 8. You just mute your mic. We'll be
Okay.
back in 5 minutes.
All right.
It's got all these neat little options I haven't really explored. everyone, and welcome back to our alumni step workshop. We have a special guest tonight, and we'll be doing step 4, writing it down. I'd like you to give a nice welcome to Devin. Devin's here with us tonight. How are you, Devin?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Well, Dev, I'm going to start with a quick review of what we did the last 2 weeks, and we did steps 1 through 3. We talked a little bit about what those steps would look like from the perspective of a member in Alcoholics Anonymous, a general way of the procedures in NA, and if you were in some other program, Dharma or recovery, what would this unfold? What would this procedure be? A surrendering, an inventory up to this point. So step 1, we admit to a fatal and progressive disorder, substance use disorder. And from there, this hopelessness, this idea that you hear in 12-step programs, that you can't solve this problem by yourself. And it's not from some of us, a lack of trying. So some intervention takes place. Oh. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah, I can't see you though.
Can you see me now?
I cannot. No, I just got bigger.
Can you hold on? I think there's a technical error.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Can you see me now?
No, it's still black. The screen's black. It loaded as though to indicate that somebody's supposed to be there, but the screen is just black.
Very strange. Well, I'll try to fix it within the 5 minutes. If not, I could be like this position of voiceover.
Yeah.
It comes from the mist. Yeah, the inner thought, the architect of all consciousness. Guys, if you could just be patient 1 second. I'm going to try to fix this, and then we'll be right up.
There you are.
Ah, I'm here. I've arrived.
Yep.
I have arrived. Everyone was checking to make sure I was all right. Camera is on. Okay. Bam. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. The clunkiness of Zoom and stream. We're here. Jumping right back into the review. Step 1, that's the admittance of a fatal and illness that we have. Step 2 is kind of this dance between 1 and 2, of how, we've been compromised to fix this ourselves. And we see the power in what an obsession is. Just neurologically, you're competing with 1/8 of a second from a message that could show up in your limbic center as an obsession. I'm not talking about withdrawal or physical, just the idea of use or fear or anger, and how it turns into an obsession, a compulsion to use your drug of choice. And you really don't have access to your temporal lobes, this rational mind. And you unlike a normal person, you're competing with 1/8 of a second before it could start to be considered an action. That's Herculean without some kind of medical intervention of treatment to overcome yourself. So we make all these admittances, and we start to get around in 12-step communities. What AA gets us, or NA. We're starting to make friends. We're starting to believe this trust that they have the same disorder and addiction as us. Maybe the solution will be the same for me. That's this flirtation in step 2 that I'm going to join. I'm going to be a part of this fellowship. I'm going to do more than go to meetings. I might work the program. Mm-hmm. And you could finalize this idea, this oath in step 3. And it's a surrendering, they're saying, of your will. The language could sound strong today in 2022, like you're joining a cult. You can't surrender your will. You're not being coerced. You're actively giving something up, the idea that you can defend yourself from this addiction, and you're asking for help, and you're making an oath that you're going to go on with the rest of the steps. That's step 3. You're making a decision. Now, how you know you finished step 3 is we're going to find out tonight. You have to work step 4. Ah, what a trick. But it's the first of the action steps. And it's this ability to now measure where the ego and my personality, where all these complex ideas stand. A makes it real simple. They stop talking about use and begin to describe addiction as 4 personality traits, these ideas and concepts of fear, selfishness, dishonesty, and resentment. And we saw them we were confronting the idea of selfishness at step 3. Well, the 3 remaining character defects we're going to approach are in step 4. And that's going to be first our resentments, then our fears, and then we'll say a prayer for dishonesty or this consideration. And that's where we're at tonight. And Devin has a lot of experience seeing people in their first year of recovery make this consideration. Do I have to go this far? Am I going to go all the way? Not only with himself, but the people he helps and guides throughout the year that are right in the middle of this process we're talking tonight. Devin, why don't you let everyone know who you are and what we're doing here tonight?
All right, great. Thank you. Yeah, I'm Devin. I'm an alcoholic. I'm also an alumni of Avenues myself. And as you stated, I work here as well. So I'm fortunate enough to see people in the different phases of their process and of their journey. And, at any given day, I'm spending time with people that are trying to get through working or understanding a first step, as well as a 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, which it's a pretty amazing thing to be able to see people in all these different areas. And it certainly gives me a lot more awareness and insight into myself, or it definitely helps me reflect back on myself and my process and where I was at, and, the way I thought and the way I refused to think and things of that nature. Yeah, I mean, I think the 4th step is certainly, for me, it was definitely the first most important step for me. Obviously, the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd step are, really the most important. You can't do any other step without the 1st step, and so on and so forth. But, I think the 12 says it. It's the last line in the 4th step, that this step is the first. I don't know exactly what it is, but this is something tangible. This is actually program in action. This is me sitting down, writing things down, putting it out there, doing some actual physical, tangible work, and having the opportunity to see the results. It's my experience. I had gone in and out a few times before I got sober this time, and I was lucky enough to do a couple 4th steps over the years, and so I've definitely done them and looked at them different ways throughout my process. I guess I'll just talk about my experience with the 4th step, Joe. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
How that unpacks. I think most of us find, I don't know if you see this for years, me being around AA, I think the 4th step usually someone hits a wall with it on average within their first year or 2 years of recovery. Mm-hmm. I think in the last decade or so, you see that kind of unfold. And for some people, I think the catalyst is distress within sobriety, that they go further. Others, they're just being led into the 4th step. I've had both kind of scenarios rise up, like distress, pain, discomfort in sobriety. And it was time to really get down to the causes and conditions of what an addiction is without booze. I think that narrative, we all have our own. And I don't think there's any way to judge it. How do we all end up right in inventory? And I think that's what most people encounter. Oh, I didn't do it right. Well, just do it. Just start. Yeah. There's no better time to start. What's the worst that can happen if you think you're at this place? So I think that would help. Like,
yeah, I think as you said, everybody's experience is different, and I think like yourself, I was fortunate enough to kind of encountered a few different ways. To be honest, I look back at the first time I did a fourth step, and the reality was, I wrote it in probably a Saturday and Sunday. I sat down and I just grinded out for 12 hours. And if you were to ask me then, I would have said that was the time that I was, just utterly defeated and ready to put in the work. Looking back now, I'd say more so I was just ready to check off the boxes in hopes that something stuck. But that was something I had to learn over time. You know, I needed to do it a couple times to realize what, rigorous honesty meant, and the need to be as thorough as possible. Um, and yeah, so I think that, my experience is just that it wasn't something that I was afraid of. And I think one of the biggest reasons I wasn't necessarily afraid to do a fourth step the first time, I think I got more afraid as the years went on and I really understood what it was about. But I think I was blessed to be in treatment where they had a 12-step philosophy. And so we were kind of taught exactly what the purpose of the steps was, and what the goal and the intention of those steps was prior to leaving. Because as somebody, especially my first time in treatment with zero experience or knowledge of what the program is, as you kind of mentioned earlier, whether I looked at it as something culty or just different, I wasn't prepared to have somebody else change my perspective or allow somebody else to change my perspective. And so I was definitely apprehensive about it. But through being in inpatient treatment, and if anything, I paid attention, I kind of got an understanding of what the point was or what the purpose was. So that first time I did a fourth step, I wasn't as afraid as, a lot of people are. Um, I was afraid to share it with another human being. And yeah, it definitely brought up some emotions that I had tried to bottle down or suppress for a long time. But I was also, I felt this, this need to get through it. And, it's my experience that the majority of the things that I put down on my fourth step were things that I shamed myself for, or beat myself up for, or more importantly, like existed in the thoughts of resentment towards other people throughout the majority of my life. These were the reasons I used. These were the reasons that I justified my behaviors and my actions. And so this stuff was constantly running through my mind. So I wasn't having a hard time putting it on paper. It was just like a flow of my normal thoughts at that time in my life. And, just the act of doing it for me began to show me what the 12 steps do in regards to giving us a sense of freedom. Just knowing that I was doing something different, that I was putting it on paper, and that I was getting these thoughts out of my head and onto this paper with the idea that I'm going to allow somebody else to look at them, was enough for me to feel a little bit better, enough for me to know, like, hey, for the first time in your life, you're taking suggestions, you're doing something that's a little difficult, with the idea that it's going to help you and change you, regardless of whether or not you want to do it. So I didn't necessarily have like a fear of doing it. I didn't have this overwhelming struggle with putting it down. And again, I had existed in the chaos of the feelings and the emotions and the self-pity and the fear, that I was putting on that paper for the majority of my life. So, again, in my experience, it was just something I was really ready to do. Now, I didn't stay sober after that because I didn't continue to do the rest of the work, as well as a slew of other things. So when I had the opportunity to come and do a second fourth step, or even a third fourth step, things began to get more difficult, because as I continue to do these things, and even now, it doesn't matter. I think it's a beautiful thing to do multiple fourth steps throughout your sobriety. I think it's something you should do on a regular basis. Obviously, take an inventory, but when you have something come up, there's no reason you can't do a fourth step. But the awareness that I was given through that process almost made things, as time went on, a little bit more difficult for me emotionally, because the more aware I got, the more time I got, the more my ego got bigger because I thought I was staying sober and doing the right thing, the harder it really was to take a look at myself, because those initial thoughts were out of my mind, and now these ones were just creeping up in sobriety, you know. Maybe I'm going a little all over the place, but yeah, I think I had a lecture with Joe Kane today. 5 years later, and I still have to get lectured by Joe Kane. And I love it. But we were talking about complex change, and we were discussing the need for skills and the need for resources, and the different variables of change, and then how necessary they are in the success of us staying sober. And I think that my fourth step was one of those skills that I needed to acquire, and one of those resources that I needed to utilize that I didn't have prior to doing it. And without it, I wasn't able to be sober. And, now today, regardless of how long it's been since I did my initial fourth step, I'm still able to utilize that resource and utilize that skill and apply it today to get through life, and put things into action, whether it be for my sobriety or just for my relationships or dealing with other people. This is the fourth step is acquiring a very helpful skill, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't know if you had it. I'm just going on. So
No, I was going to let you go. The key point you brought up is when you did it and that you were fearless. And it sounds like you had a lot of experience being part of the fellowship at that point and feeling comfortable and wanting recovery. I think an interesting thing that a lot of people do here regionally is introduce someone around step 3 to step 10. And we already do that. Most treatment centers do, but Avenues does that because it's a 12-step based program. Every night we review our day. So we're already familiar with these concepts and ideas of resentment. It's refeeling your life, an unreconciled relationship that either is soured, it doesn't even have to be anger. We're recognizing what fear can do to us, that we are lost in our thoughts. It creates agitation. It can form into depression. We know what dishonesty does to us, and it's not even just lying. This dishonest idea that I'm my ego and not the vulnerable personality I was born to be, like find strength in that. That's where they confront that. You really touched on that. Unlike most people, the addict, the alcoholic knows he leads this double life, and it creates shame. Like it interweaves it into, like, personally for me, it felt like shame was part of my personality. The confrontation of writing this down, and there's multiple ways. You described the one where you can write it down in a weekend. And I think there's a lot of great resources we can offer people and links here. Russell Brand puts a nice little outline in his book, AA, written in 1935. You see the diagram, but sometimes there's more elaborate workshops. Hazelton makes one. I personally I relapsed and had decades of experience of being around 12-step programs. I wrote one resentment at a time, and I was practicing the 10-step on page 86 every night, reading it, making sure I wasn't starting new fires.
yeah,
I'm writing these things down. And where I had to be fearless, and you mentioned it, I had the same experience. I wrote stuff down, but I didn't flush out the details because I was maybe rushing the cause, and then it affects these certain ideals in me, and in parentheses, fear. I would write them down, and as I was discussing it, I was realizing how clever and how powerful an unmeasured ego, especially in someone who has an addiction, is. That I'm looking at it and I'm like, that's not totally true. I need to speak to this more. There's something I'm hiding in my fifth step. And this is where the relief of that double life could come to an end. And you could put guardrails up to an ego that it's failed me. It doesn't defend me anymore. It's never taken away my insecurity at this point, in the sense that I needed it to. I'm going to find a new road. That's the excitement I heard you talking about that we're going to encounter in the next couple steps. But if anyone tonight, we're going to open it up for questions shortly. If anyone needs resources tonight, when you're answering questions, Devin, it's Googling the fourth step. There's no I'm not a fanatic or a fundamentalist. I know fundamentalists and I appreciate them in any 12-step group. But find someone you trust and start writing. You'll know it's time in your gut. This is the contents of my mind without drugs. And we're going to find out half of it, it's an illusion. I've been living a life that has a systematic pattern that's making resentments and fear, and it's churning. And then I'll get relief. And I think it's gone away. I wished it away. The fourth step is not a new idea, even of this century. It's a Socratic idea to examine your life. Mm-hmm. Very few people, we should count ourselves lucky to be in recovery, get a chance to find out what the contents of their mind is. I've been living a life that's not real. I heard a guy say once his first addiction was fantasy. And my fantasies were wrapped up in the narratives of resentments. And most of my cognitive space was spent there. And the first relief I found from this was alcohol, then marijuana and cocaine. And that's the story you've heard from Devin tonight and myself. And I think we can ask some support, just logistically share primarily from our experience of how we approach the fourth step and how any one of us can. And the fourth step doesn't end. That was a great point you brought up. Like refuge recovery is interesting. They just say we're going to do it annually, annual house cleaning. Some people say if you have a resentment, you talk about it and it doesn't go away. Well, that's when you have to write down again.
Yeah.
So, guys, we're going to open it up for questions, and I'm going to feel through clicking over here and see what we could do. And when I get time, I'll type in some some links, or you could contact any one of your alumni coordinators to reach out. If anyone's struggling tonight, struggling with staying sober, or needs immediate help, or has drank or used drugs, reach out to us immediately, and we'll get in touch with you tonight and see how we can help. A lot of greetings here. Welcome. There's a contest for a scarf going on, a competition.
Oh, wow.
Alumni here. I'm watching it unfold. Hi, Ashley. Ashley did our first and second step. Louisiana. Awesome. It was awesome. Who's that? Megan. You know her, Devin?
Oh, yeah. Speaking of resentments, yeah.
Full disclosure, that's a brother and sister.
That's right. We've been through the thick of it. Yep.
I'm trying to get down to the questions here, Billy. Hey, everyone. Billy V here, Lake Erie. Hey, Billy. Hey, Bill, answer me. You've had a hell of a year, big changes. Have you picked up your pen or paper? Have you had any experience? Drop something in the comments and let us know, because you've had a lot of good experience being sober right now. That'd be great to hear. Xavier, my fantasies were my main addiction. Just the idea of stuff, not necessarily the substance, but the substance is a major part of it. I relate to that deeply, Xavier. And I think that is the crisis addiction kind of lays waste to, is the inability to be present. And I think early AA and NA knew that. And that's where the word kind of spirituality comes from. This ability to be present. I think for the pain addicts and alcoholics carry, either from trauma or detachment, is so intolerable and our worth that you can't be present. And the first time you felt that you could was an illusion of a drug. And there's a half truth to that. But no one could sustain a life using drugs, especially daily, if your addiction takes hold. I think we're both speaking the same language when you from your sentence. I understand that deeply in most of my life.
Yeah, because I hope you're doing well, buddy. I just want to say as well, yeah, I couldn't relate more to that. The idea of fantasies being, one of my first addictions, if you will, as well as it being a direct result of my resentments. My early life, I created an entire image of myself based on resentments. Down to the music I listened to. I was like the hopeless romantic poetry art kid, who just laid in my room and listened to Bright Eyes and wrote these horrific poems about how bad my life was. And, you know, I was so stuck and so deep in the resentments that I had, even in like the earliest of my life, that I really allowed it to mold me and manipulate me into the person that I became in active addiction, and even in sobriety early on, without the willingness to really take a look at myself and the depth of my resentments. Yeah, I think just the fantasy is just a big part. The idea. I bet if my sister and I sat next to each other on this screen and we told our stories at the same time, they would likely sound very different based on my perception and my insanity, and Megan's as well. It's pretty interesting how it works that way. And I needed that fourth step to readjust my reality and help me see a clear perspective of the way things really were. Not the way they are, not the way I wanted them to be, not the way that worked for me, but the reality of what things were. One of the most valuable pieces for me was to be able to say, like, oh, wait, like, yeah, that was bad, but holy smokes, like, I did this, and I could stop it because now I have the knowledge and awareness to know that it was me. I was responsible for that, and I don't have to live that way anymore. And without that fourth step and that fifth step, a man helping me take a look at that, I'd probably still be sitting here in the same delusion, writing poetry and feeling sorry for myself. It's a great thing.
We got a question, Devin, from Akiva. What's the role of a sponsor in a fourth step? And is it essential to do a fourth step? Well, you want me to bite off a little of that? I'm going to pass it off to you, Devin. But the role of a sponsor, traditionally, they're going to help you navigate how they wrote a fourth step. And there could be, AA is non-professional help, but so is NA. So sometimes you'll encounter a sponsor. This is the form I use. Just follow it. Follow it. And if you trust the guy and it worked for him, do it. Other guys will take you through the book very methodically and slowly. What questions to ask. And I've gone through the book this way, and I'll write the resentment, and there'll be a litany of questions afterwards that almost look associated in AA with the sex inventory. Where was I selfish, dishonest? Where did I create jealousy, suspicion? Whom else did I hurt as a result of this resentment? And I answered those questions, and I would find there was 5 to 6 names with every one resentment. And they were going to go to my 8th and 9th step. So my sponsor, he would help in a delicate way, not power-driven or browbeating me. Why don't you ask this question here? And they guide you through that. Some sponsors now, my sponsor is when I call them, it's AA business. I called them last week. I had a little mini resentment. We flushed it out. I talked about it. But we have a script we go through. Where was you at fault? And I'm seeing this pattern that, the problem's Joe, not the resentment. And the resentment could be a crisis too. But how is Joe going to deal with it? Sober, sanely, spiritually, keep my integrity, stay honest, not live in fear or dread. And how can I best be useful as a result of this resentment? Do I own amends? So a sponsor helps you do that. Your self-appraisal, unfortunately, with our condition, especially in early sobriety or your first fourth step, it's just not enough. You need some guides to that. And it is essential.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think, I wouldn't be anywhere without a sponsor. I certainly wouldn't have been able to do a fourth step because if I had taken myself through it, I would still have the exact same perspective on things. I certainly wasn't going to sit there by myself and tell myself that I'm responsible for all these things and this was me and this is how I was dishonest or fearful. I wouldn't have had any of that. But yeah, I'm very, very, I guess, old school in the idea that, my sponsor's role is to take me through the steps, to guide me through the steps, and to do it the way that their sponsor took them. Obviously, well, at least with my sponsor, we did it out of the book. I've also done it with the syllabus and, kind of with a group of men. There are different ways, but specifically in regards to how I got the relief before doing it other ways was to write it out of the book, the way the book describes. And my sponsor was there to just answer any questions I had about that, to encourage me, to hold me accountable if I was, dragging my feet. And most importantly, let me know that I'm not the only person, going through this, and that he had done it too. And to show me how this experience was going to benefit me and really just encourage me. And like you said, not browbeat. I need a tough guy. I need a guy who's going to be hard on me. I'm receptive to that. And, so mine just told me what I needed to hear, and just made sure that I got through that fourth step, and made sure that, I didn't rush it. A huge thing that I meant to mention earlier, and something I struggled with greatly in writing a fourth step, was I initially was writing it based on the idea of saying what he would want to hear. I wasn't writing it for myself, because I like to write. I like to, do these things. So I was writing this like creative, beautiful form of literature that I was going to then read to him, and he was going to appreciate for the way that I put it. And
Kevin, read us some tonight. Read us
yeah,
some.
yeah, I might have some in the back, honestly. I think I have my book. But it took me talking to him and telling him where I'm at, and him saying, this, you got to write this for you. You need to hear it, not me, and it was small things like that's where a sponsor was so detrimental and so useful in taking me through the steps, because I certainly I wouldn't have known that, if I wasn't asking questions and talking about it. And I would have written something that wasn't for me and ultimately wouldn't have been useful to me in the end, and valuable,
Well, I also like that you were distinct, and people, you found an alcoholic of your type. You didn't pick a pagan biker that did
Right.
10 years. That would be, there's a nuance to that. And you found someone you could trust. So when he did ask you questions, you didn't take a red pen. He was probing a little, and you kind of set a light bulb off. Like, oh, I'm seeing what this is about. What I was curious about too, Devin, was, did you find that you had like 10 kind of core resentments? I hear this a lot with people, and they just repeat themselves.
Absolutely.
Like a pattern.
The same pattern. And that was another difficulty I had, is that I'm going through it, and I'm realizing by, maybe a quarter of the way through the pattern itself. And then I start to convince myself, well, I figured out the pattern, so now I don't need to write the rest. Like I got it now. So it got to a point where I'd go to put something on paper, and I would talk myself into understanding what exactly this was supposed to be, and almost find myself not writing it. But obviously through talking to people, I continue to do it. But yeah, you're absolutely right. There was a pattern to everything, and it was these core resentments. The beauty was, as I had done more and tried to be more thorough, as I learned to actually be honest with myself and others, the ones that I thought were these huge core resentments, the big resentment was usually very small, somewhere in this, what I thought huge core resentment was, if that makes sense.
No, it does. That's what it was, a revelation to me. Like, I've been repeating relationships. I've been sabotaging relationships because of probably the first 10 years of my life, just repeating these patterns of disappointment, betrayal, whatever, real or imagined. And I came to believe this victim narrative, which I didn't want to admit. I wouldn't call myself a victim. But my inner dialogue was telling me I was cheated. I was screwed, and then I go into the fantasy life, this alternative. That's a resentment. And I found there was that pattern could be broken. And after the fourth step, within that year, I was starting to see when that would rise up. Like when I'd start thinking that way and I'd be like, I know what this is. This is bad. This is bad thinking. This is what addiction is. Someone's doing something to me, real or perceived. And I would see the fears now had nothing to do with my resentments or people. Like when I had a fear associated in a relationship, the fear's been in me. Someone's just reminding me of it, that I don't think I'm important. I have nothing to say. I'm going to end up alone and broke. These are core fears. And the fourth step showed me how to rip them away from people's names. They did not cause this fear. This is how I feel about myself. This has to change. Let's see. I think we have some more questions. Here's an interesting one. Johnny. Hey, Johnny. Hope you're well. If I relapse and I am on, say, step 9, do I have to restart the steps? Well, I think you have a different problem than procedure. You might need stabilization, especially if you woke up a pattern in your mind and you've gotten a late stage addiction, or you can experience pause. This if alcohol is your drug of choice, that's a big consideration. Do you have post-acute alcohol withdrawal syndrome? This could last for weeks and weeks, and it's real, and it's biological and metrical. You can measure it, its effects. You might want some guidance in there, and I would suggest reaching out to Meg tonight if that's the case. If this is a hypothetical, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but yeah, of course, I think it would be all right to start. And what do you mean by start the steps again? Of course, you have to take the consideration. Am I done? Like, is this it? Am I going to go to any lengths to stay sober? And that consideration is, have I meditated every day? Have I done a 10th step every night? While doing all of these steps, these first 9, there's no achievement in completing the steps. They can't be completed. It's a discipline of life. So not only for me to stay sober, because it's not the sobriety is the guard line. The steps are showing me that resentment, fear, and dishonesty are what I'm looking out for, not Kensington. So if I look out for these things, I'm putting active use another 1,000 yards down the road. But sometimes we might need some medical observation to do that. So don't hesitate. I mean, your life's worth living. To invest the time in the beginning of those first 3 steps to get a strong foundation.
Yeah, I think for myself, generally from past experiences, I had been taken through the 12 steps with the sponsor, and was trying to practice them as regularly as possible. And with 2 years sober, I relapsed. I would love to have just stopped using and just continue to practice the 12 steps and, the way I had been doing it, and, been a sponsor to people and gone that route. But for me personally, and specifically because I listened to what my sponsor suggested after I relapsed in regards to what I should do with the steps, if I should do them again or not. I think that was really important for me. I had to go back and do them. I recognize that perhaps I missed something, or perhaps I lacked the knowledge or the experience to apply it in an area that I was lacking. Because for me personally, I believe that I relapsed as a direct result of not working this program to the best of my ability. And I wanted to know as much as possible how to work this program. And so I needed to go back and I needed to do it again. And that's my experience. And that's what my sponsor had me do. And as Joe said, I mean, there was absolutely no stopping for me without medical intervention. I wish it was easier than that, but yeah, I had to go in and I had to get right with myself and remove myself from the substance. And I kind of had to start over, and start back at square one, because, get back to the first step, because if I'm using, I need to really focus on the first 3. for that time at least. So that's just my experience, but I always, some things I just push off. I think it's up
Yeah.
to that person's sponsor.
Some healing just takes time in a safe
Yeah.
place. I mean,
Yeah.
even if you're intelligent, it's not a level of intelligence to write a fourth step. It's a level that you're safe. You have a pattern of sobriety. You got a little time under your belt. And what I mean, that could be, for some people, 3 months. That could be up to a year to 24 months.
Mhm.
And you're safe, and you have a pattern, and you have a trusted sponsor, a friend, a guide. That could even be a clinician. And you can write these things. So take your time. You can't rush these. You're not achieving anything. You just let them flow. And that flow comes from a relationship like Devin was mentioning, the relationship between your guide, your sponsor, and any one of these programs.
Mhm.
That was a beautiful way to answer. But Johnny, please don't hesitate to reach out to us tonight. If we could be any assistance, we'll take care of it. Lee, I've heard that saying that resentments are planned expectations. How do you feel like our expectations play into our resentments? Expectations are fantasies. So if you really consider expectations, they're not like in the regards of what you're using the word for. You're already assuming what the future is. And what we're talking about when expected resentments, this means there's a relationship. It's not what I just expect from my future. It's what I expect from someone else to make my future happy. Some kind of behavior is required on their part. This is autocracy. This is the mind of an addict and alcoholic. I demand that I know what how you're going to behave so I can enjoy my life. This is a falsehood. This is a lie that I've lived by for many years. If people would just behave, I would be fine. And nothing could be more adolescent. And that's kind of where I've been stunted with my afflicted addictions. So yeah, expectations feed into this fictitious part of a relationship I'm having that doesn't allow people to have their own liberties and make their own mistakes. How am I going to live in this world sober, free of fear and anxiety without needing expectations met? That's the realm of the spirit. That's where you live in the fourth dimension, because I could just respond in real time. I don't have to have these I could live in the moment that I'm experiencing, and that's liberty. And I'm not always there, but when I am, I get a taste of what I want out of my recovery. Oh, that's it. That's why it was worth doing everything I can to get through my first month of sobriety, 6 months, a year, the fourth step, the fifth step. So that's how I relate to it.
Yeah, I love that question. I think it comes up a lot, at least in my experience, at work with clients or even people in the rooms, and definitely in my own life. It also is mentioned in the 12 and 12 regarding the fourth step, what you said about specifically about, and I relate to every word in there. So I could be every version, but I'd either bleed people dry, right, of everything with the expectation that like they're going to be willing to give it to me and continue to give it to me even after I've taken everything from them, or that they're going to do what I want, this power, this control. And it sounds so like villainous and maniacal when you put it in those words, but when I was actively doing it, it was as small as somebody not asking me how I'm doing when I'm moping around feeling sorry for myself, and allowing something as small as that to build into this huge thing and destroy my relationships, and I think that's the biggest area in which, if I allowed them to today, expectations would ultimately destroy and breed resentment, is professionally, in my personal relationship with my partner or my family. I wished everybody did what I wanted them to do all the time, or even with clients, it's easy. And I see it a lot, whether it be within myself or other people, is I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to do something for you. I'm trying to give you something. You might not even want it, but I'm going to give it to you. And then when people don't act the way I want them to, or I think they should, whether it be to do what I'm saying or have a sense of gratitude, here I am, these people don't care. My head, it'll just go straight. They don't care about me. It goes from them not caring about me all the way to, me not being good enough. And I'm stuck right back in the hole I was in active addiction. I mean, it's wild. I was joking before I came on here, and it's funny. I just said I was going to mention it as the flyer for this said Devin, special guest Devin Reefus, house manager, right? And I'm the director of housing. Does it actually matter? No, right? But in another world, in another situation, it would have. I would have
Yeah.
packed my garbage bags, right, and threw them in the back of my car and quit my job and left because everybody should know who I am.
The
You know what I mean?
injustice.
Don't they know who I am? And here I am once again hurting me. I'll hurt me. Um, when it was simple as like, hey,
Yeah.
this is what it is. But yeah, I mean, expectations will be my demise if I
I'm
allow them.
skirting responsibility for that. I didn't make the poster, Devin.
Yeah, no, and it was completely fine. I think it's funny now. I thought it was
it's gotta be.
appropriate. I actually loved it because I knew we were talking about this. And when I say that I would quit my job and move 200 miles away for something as simple as that in the past, I mean it. I would destroy relationships, professional careers, opportunities based on the expectations of other people,
When you mention that, I relate to that hypersensitivity in the in the 30s when the book was written. They're examining this, saying, we're getting down to causes and conditions, and the objective is we're going to remove this stuff. But we also have to now finally admit how the world and its people dominated us.
Mm-hmm.
Now, fast forward 2022. There's a lot deeper and more complex concepts that allow us to talk about this more intelligently. What did happen to you and me that can make us so sensitive? And there's a condition, it's almost acute. Like I could see your eye contact's off or your leg, and I'm devastated. Like I know what you're thinking. Addicts have this, and alcoholics, a lot that I relate to.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes from a sense of trauma, abandonment, betrayal trauma. And it becomes a condition of life. And my first relief from it, it's the prior condition to addiction, was drinking. And a really thorough fourth step can allow you to see this. And I always suggest at this time, like fourth and fifth step is a time, if you do have traumas, real perceived or violent, you might want to unpack them with a clinician. Some people, you could always do a fifth step with one, but that kind of behavior was showing up in me even after the fourth step, but I was seeing it. Like I was like observing myself going, this isn't reality. Like, this isn't how I want to think, or why am I so scared? I want to stop being so afraid. Like, I was seeing what the fear really was. It was my personality.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's something to be excited about now. I think it's hard to see in the moment or even necessarily early in recovery. But I tell the guys and girls here all the time, and I share with my friends that, like, when I gain that awareness, finding those flaws in myself, finding those things, seeing those things come up now and being able to recognize them and get through them and be challenged to overcome something that's ultimately going to make me a better person, a better version of myself that day, it becomes something exciting that I chase, and I wouldn't be able to do that without a fourth step, because that helped me look at the equation for me to discover what's wrong with myself. And once I use that equation, I get the solution. And that's something that's exciting today. I love being challenged with things that I recognize are bad or flawed about myself today, because it becomes an opportunity for growth, and life gets mundane and boring. So even the smallest little chance to live in chaos and remind yourself of how to get out of it becomes something awesome,
We'll try to get to a couple more. Guys, if we don't get to your questions tonight, I'll see them on the post, but there's my email. If you ever want to reach out to me, any questions or support I could help with, guides to questions about getting a sponsorship, applying the steps, please reach out. Reach out to Megan, Ashley, any one of your alumni coordinators for help for you or your friends or family. I'm going to hit a couple more questions. I also have to put a plug in, Devin, for hammock readings. I don't know if you've seen them.
I've seen them. They're great.
Powerful stuff.
It's great. I love it.
I enjoy them. They're getting more esoteric. We're exploring more ideas and trying to make sure we can get the full circle of thought, things that are provoking, from poetry, little philosophy, spirituality, even borrow for some religions. Not that we're endorsing any of them, but they're just ideas that anyone can read and could have value for you. Check out hammock readings every morning. It's a way to start your day with intention. They're on our Facebook and YouTube. I'm going to go back to, I'm trying to go in order. Lisa, I think we answered that, Lisa. Okay. Travis, I've never done an honest sex inventory. Now that I think about it, any advice on how to maintain willingness when the time comes to do it? Because I'm willing now, but you know how it is. Keeping motivation. Well, Travis, I think going to meetings, the more you talk about it with a good support group and friends, they'll encourage you. And it also, it could be tough. That's like drill sergeant encouragement. Then are you going to get tired of going to meetings when everyone asks you, hey, you told me you were right for it, step? It depends on the caliber and the style of your friends, but talk more openly about it. Like you just did right now is the encouragement. You want something more. And the great thing is, if you're going to get into a meaningful relationship, say you fall in love between now and then before you did an inventory, it's going to be difficult and someone could get hurt. So I think it's always good to prepare this. It's going to allow more beautiful things to come into your life that our personalities, we don't need to be drunk, could sometimes sabotage. So the best times now, it seems like.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I think if that's how you feel now, do it now, as long as that's what your sponsor is encouraging you to do, or somebody in your life. It's the best part is, like Joe said, you put it out there now, and just find people that are going to hold you accountable and push you and help you get as free as you want to be. That's just what it is.
We got another question from Weston. We'll do a little overtime. Deb, you up for overtime?
Absolutely.
Pretty active questions here. And it's, I think, where we all need the most guidance. We always feel like we could do this wrong or anything like so any support we could give. Hey, Joe, how are you? Regarding resentment, let's say after you write your resentment down, you talk about it, you go through it, addressing it. But the resentment is towards an individual, one that continues to do the same thing that caused the resentment in the first place. You totally cut that person out from your life. Or how do you address that if you continue to catch resentments? Well, I don't think it's as difficult or complex as it sounds. So let's think of the resentment. Most of the things that have happened aren't happening anymore while you're writing it. You're evaluating your past, this misty ideas that are in our head. And we're only telling our side of the story. But the hope with writing this down is that we're not trying to convince a sponsor that, guess what, I'm right. You may or may not be. And you're not in court. What you're seeing is how it's destroying your life thinking this way. Like resentments are cancer to anything that is called well-being, peace of mind, flourishment. And that's what we want to see when we write this down. Now, will that involve cutting someone off? I don't know. I don't know the details of your resentment. If that person has harmed you, is a physical threat to you, has caused trauma, yeah, I think that would be an option. But if this is someone, like, you have to know if you're measuring the truth about what happened and how it's affecting you. And do you owe this person an amends? Because that's the real weight, the metric between steps 4 and 9. Do I owe this resentment amends? So with good guidance, and if you reach out to an alumni coordinator, you can flush this out. You can get more than one person involved because it sounds like you want to solve it. without hurting anyone. And that would be key. You want to take the next one?
Yeah.
There we go. Kayla, I'll read it out loud for you. I'm currently writing a fourth step, and I was on top of my list of, I was on the top of my list for resentments. I'm kind of loving this step. I truly feel it's helping me to grow. Okay, too much.
More of a statement, but yeah, I mean, that's amazing. It looks like you must be getting something out of it if you're enjoying it, and you can feel the growth in it, you know. I'm understanding, are you saying that, I guess she's saying that she was her biggest resentment, or she had the biggest resentments towards herself? Is that what the first sentence is?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. I had experiences with sponsors who wouldn't allow me to write myself because they probably didn't have enough time in their life to listen to me talk about my personal resentments. And then I had others that helped me, you know, take a look at the big ones, like you said, and find the patterns. But yeah, I mean, I lived in a state of resentment towards myself forever. But that step helped me get out of it, you know?
Devin, I'm getting overwhelmed with how many people are already experiencing this, and a year of recovery. I'm counting them, like people I saw come through Lake Ariel, and I don't know if Ashley's seeing this. People, you know, really got involved with the steps, and it shows. There's Billy. He came back. Once I did an honest and open, willing fourth step for the first time in my life with another human being, I was able to look at my part in every aspect of my life: selfish, self-seeking, self-centered, riddled with fear and incomprehensible demoralization. Once Billy identified Billy as the problem, I was able to move forward and honestly look at my part in every situation. By doing that, I was shown by my sponsor the patterns. See, like that's the that just arises organically. You're seeing patterns in the facts of my life. I work on my character defects every single day. I'm working on them, like, you know, we say that a lot, but what does that look like? And I think Billy could relate, and you could. It's measuring the day. What did I do today? Did I go on autopilot? Did I disappear? Did I retreat somewhere consciously? Could I not face the present day? And that's how I think we're always trying to do 10, 11, and 12, staying engaged.
Yeah.
I see a lot of comments, but there's not too many more questions. You can always reach out to me through my email of any questions or support or links I could send to you. Do not hesitate to send me an email, and I'll respond to these questions within the week. I'd like to see a round of applause quietly from all your homes for Devin. Devin, I can't thank you enough of an honest, sincere account, and just very easy procedurally. You can do it. You can do it if you're scared. You can do it when you're not scared, and you've got enough friends and support, and you went through it, and we could be writing it again. We know we don't have to die from a resentment.
Right.
Guys, check out Hammock Readings. You need anything, reach out to any one of us, and we'll see you next week. We'll be doing step 5.
Thank you guys so much. Thanks for having me, Joe.
You got it, brother. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Have a good one.